Have you ever judged someone by the color of their skin, even silently? Because a man once did. He chose racial prejudice, thinking it was a way to defend his own people, and it dragged him into hell. What he saw in the afterlife shattered everything he once believed in. Not only did he witness hell with his own eyes, but he also met Jesus face to face. There, the Lord revealed the full truth to him, and he brought that truth back. So what exactly did he witness? Stay with us until the end and receive this powerful warning from eternity. Before we begin, as always, please comment on your name and the city you're listening from. We want to see how far this message can travel, and we hope God hears your prayer. Not only that, but we will lift you up in our own prayers, asking the Lord to shine His light on you and your household. Now, listen carefully to the testimony that follows. My name is Nathaniel. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and lived here for 77 years. This life experience made me aware of a sin I didn't even realize I had committed, one that might send you to hell too. So listen carefully. To make you understand, I need to start with this story. I was 14 years old when one day I went to the neighborhood store to buy a bottle of soda. The white woman at the counter gave me a look that made me feel something was wrong. Even a simple look can tell a lot to someone that young. Within a minute, a police officer came into the store, twisted my arm, and pinned me against the wall. "What did you steal?" "Empty your pockets," he demanded. All I had on me was that bottle of soda, but I knew explaining wouldn't help. That moment burned itself into my mind. That day I made myself a promise. I would never let anyone treat me that way again. The anger I felt that day grew inside me over the years. "You'll defend your people, Nate," I told myself, but that anger led to things I couldn't foresee. On July 12, 2024, as always, I went for an evening walk at Shelby Farms Park. It was a ritual that brought me peace. I was following my usual path when I heard a faint rustling behind me, like the sound of a leaf but heavier. I slowed my steps and instinctively turned around to check. That's when, bam, I felt an explosion of pain at the back of my head and hit the ground hard. My vision went black in an instant. I lay there for a while, my ears ringing. I tried to lift my head, but my neck felt like stone. My eyelids grew heavy, and everything faded into darkness. At that moment, I remember thinking just one thing: is this it? Is this how it ends? When I opened my eyes, a void engulfed me, not the soft darkness of a closed eyelid, but a suffocating abyss, heavy and alive, as if it could peel away my very soul. It pressed against me, a weight that made breathing feel like a theft from the air itself. I raised my hand to my face, desperate to see something familiar, but it vanished into the black, as if I no longer existed. A faint sound pierced the silence, chirp, chirp, delicate at first, like a distant insect. But it deepened, growing into something human-like, a mournful hum that twisted my gut. Moans and murmurs swirled around me, some distant, others so close they seemed to brush my skin, whispering secrets I couldn't grasp. I felt a breath, hot and sharp, grazing my ear, as if someone stood just behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, but the darkness mocked me. Nothing was there. "This must be a dream," I stammered, my voice trembling. "I need to wake up." But no amount of willing could pull me back to the world I knew. I took a step, unsure if I walked on solid ground or drifted in an endless void. The uncertainty gnawed at me, each movement a gamble against the unknown. My senses strained, searching for a tether to reality, but the darkness offered none. Then the rustling returned, no longer singular but a chorus, coming from every direction. It was heavier now, like footsteps stalking through dry leaves, circling me with purpose. My pulse raced, the air thickening with a presence I couldn't see but felt in my bones. Fear coiled in my chest, but a strange curiosity flickered alongside it. What was this place? The darkness seemed to pulse, alive with intent, drawing me deeper. I moved forward, each step a surrender to the unknown, unaware that I was descending into a realm beyond nightmares. The rustling grew louder, and then I saw them, shadows at first, vague and fleeting, like smoke curling in the dark. As my eyes adjusted, their forms sharpened, revealing red glowing eyes, sharp and predatory, not like a rat's but something far worse, glinting with malice. They moved with unnatural speed, darting through the void, their silhouettes a mockery of life. One creature halted before me, its presence a weight that pinned me in place. It was grotesque bat-like wings, tattered and veined, hung from its hunched frame, and its clawed hands, eerily human, twitched with hunger. Its ears were the worst, one torn, jagged, the other unnaturally large, quivering as if it heard my every thought. Blood oozed from its long, sharp teeth, bits of flesh caught between them, glistening in the faint red glow of its eyes. "This must be a nightmare," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "It has to be." But my feet were rooted, betraying my urge to flee. The creature tilted its head, studying me with a gaze that bored into my soul, unyielding and cruel. I felt exposed, as if it saw every fear, every sin I'd ever buried. My heart thundered, each beat a plea to escape, but I couldn't move. "Get away from me," I shouted, my voice cracking with desperation. The creature's lips stretched into a wider grin, revealing more of its bloodied teeth, a silent taunt. Then it screamed, a sound so piercing it felt like knives slicing through my mind, echoing endlessly. I covered my ears, but the scream burrowed deeper, unrelenting. Panic surged, and I ran, my legs pumping against the burning ground, but the sound chased me, a relentless predator. The creature's laughter, low and guttural, mingled with the scream, haunting every step. I stumbled through the darkness, gasping, the air thick with dread. The creature's eyes seemed to follow, their red glow a beacon in the void. This was no dream, this was hell, and its denizens were watching, waiting for me to fall. Out of breath, I stumbled forward until my legs buckled, forcing me to stop. I bent over with my hands on my knees, gasping for air that felt like molten glass pouring into my lungs. The heat was unbearable now, not just warmth or even fire, but a suffocating presence that wrapped around my body like a snake made of flame. My skin burned with every breath I took, and sweat poured down my back, stinging the open cuts I hadn't realized were there. The soles of my feet felt as if they were walking on the face of a burning stove, blistering with every step. Ahead of me, shapes began to take form in the haze, a mound of motion, not solid, not still. As I approached, I realized with horror what it was. It wasn't a pile of objects or a structure of stone. It was people. Hundreds, maybe thousands of them, writhing and tangled together in a heap of living agony. Some were on their knees, hands lifted in silent screams toward a sky that had no ear to hear. Others crawled like worms across a wasteland of ash and broken debris, their flesh red and peeling, their eyes wide and lifeless. The stench was unbearable, burning flesh, rotting garbage, chemical fumes and despair. This was no place of punishment meant to correct, but a landfill of damned souls, discarded like refuse. Scattered among them were objects that spoke of ruined lives, books reduced to smoldering ash, bottles shattered into cruel shards, rusted toys, rotting food crawling with insects. The books seemed to cry out silently, as if the stories they once held had been silenced forever. One man clutched a broken doll, his lips trembling as if whispering to a child long lost. Another woman rocked back and forth, her eyes gouged out, muttering words I couldn't make out. Every soul here was trapped in a moment of grief, guilt, or madness, reliving their failures in a loop that would never break. Their moans blended together into a song of sorrow, a chorus of the forgotten. I forced myself to walk, moving through the sea of pain, trying not to look, yet unable to look away. Their eyes, those who still had them, seemed to follow me, not with blame, but with a haunting familiarity, as if I might be the next one thrown into their ranks. I stepped over a man whose skin had fused with the ground beneath him, his mouth moving without sound. I heard my own heartbeat pounding louder in my ears than their cries, but even it could not drown out the sheer weight of human suffering around me. My soul ached as though every inch of this place was reaching out to pull me down with them. Eventually I reached a river not of water, but of green, bubbling acid. Its surface frothed and hissed, sending up a mist that scorched my eyes and burned my throat. The smell was chemical, like bleach mixed with sulfur, a stench that turned my stomach inside out. I crouched low to observe more closely, and that's when I saw them, people inside the river, their bodies contorted, skin dissolving into ribbons. They flailed and screamed, but their screams were so sharp, so shrill, they sounded like glass shattering over and over inside my mind. Their faces were melted into unrecognizable masks of agony. One man's hands had no skin left, just bones clutching at nothing, grasping at salvation that would never come. I fell to my knees, my body shaking as I tried to cover my eyes, to shut out the horror, but it was burned into my mind like acid into flesh. "This isn't real," I choked out, tears falling freely. "God, please wake me up." But there was no waking up. There was no voice from heaven. There was only hell and me, standing in it. My hands clenched the hot earth, my fingernails scraping the ash, trying to anchor myself, trying not to slip further into madness. Then I heard a cry, a woman's voice, sharp and broken. I turned toward the sound, rushing along the bank of the river, until I saw her. She was kneeling near the edge, her arms wrapped around herself, her shoulders shaking. Her face was buried in her hands, and for a moment I thought maybe I could save her. "I'll get you out," I yelled, running toward her. She lifted her head slowly, and when I saw her face, I froze. Her eyes were gone empty, hollow sockets stared back at me, yet they still held pain. "No one gets out," she whispered, her voice thin like paper tearing. "No one gets out." She lowered her head again, and I watched her body dissolve, melting into the acid, vanishing without a sound. I fell back, my legs giving way beneath me. Her words echoed through the valley of fire and poison, more terrifying than the screams. There was no escape, no forgiveness, no light. This was hell, not metaphor, not dream, but real, a place where hope had no meaning, where sorrow was carved into the bones of every soul. I buried my head in my hands and sobbed until the tears dried against my scorched skin, the weight of this reality breaking me more than any pain could. A chill swept over me, colder than the fire-scorched wind that had wrapped my body since I arrived in this infernal place. It wasn't a physical cold, but a spiritual one, as if the very marrow in my soul was beginning to crack. I stood motionless at the edge of the acidic river, watching its grotesque current bubble and hiss as it devoured the writhing forms within. The air was thick with sulfur and despair, and yet in the midst of it all, one face emerged from the churning horror, and that face I recognized. He wasn't a stranger from this nightmare, but a boy from my past. A student. He had sat in the front row of my high school classroom, eyes always down, voice always soft. I had never truly spoken to him, not beyond what was necessary. My own biases had wrapped around my heart like vines, whispering that he was different, that he wouldn't understand, because he was white. I had kept my distance, a distance built from history, pain, and a bitterness I never dared name. Now that same boy was here, submerged in the acid, his skin sloughing off in ragged pieces, his hands clawing for help that would never come. His mouth opened in a scream so wide it seemed unnatural, but no sound passed his lips. Only pain poured out. He turned his head, and our eyes met. I wished I hadn't looked. His gaze locked onto mine with a mixture of sorrow and knowing, and when he spoke, his voice was a wind inside my mind. "You will come too." The words didn't shout, they whispered, soft and final. I staggered back, knees buckling under the weight of their meaning. My hands clutched my chest, as though trying to pull the truth out of myself. All this time I had thought of myself as righteous, as wounded but good. I had worn my suffering like armor, but standing there, face to face with the boy I had silently condemned, I realized something damning. I had judged. I had divided. I had hated without saying the word. A sickness rolled through me, heavier than heat or fear. I tried to breathe, but each breath felt like glass inside my chest. My legs gave way, and I fell to the ashen ground. This was not just a place of pain, it was a place of truth. And the truth of my heart was now spread before me like an open wound. Behind me, the path had vanished into shadow. There was no turning back. The air pressed down on me like a furnace turned to full, and every inch of me burned, but the fire was internal now. My guilt ignited it. My bitterness fed it. Then, up ahead, glowing through the smoke, I saw it, a sign. Eternal fire. The letters weren't carved in stone or nailed to wood. They floated, burning red, suspended in the air like a curse made visible. My lips moved, forming the words aloud as if speaking them might wake me from this torment. "What am I doing here?" I asked the darkness, but the silence that followed was more chilling than any response. I wanted to run, but my body moved on its own. A force unseen gripped my spirit and pulled me forward. I could feel it not in my skin, but in my chest, a rope of gravity that didn't drag my flesh, but my soul. The deeper I walked, the thicker the air became. The smell shifted. It was no longer just charred skin or chemical smoke. There was something floral underneath, cloying and sweet, like lilies laid on coffins or perfume masking decay. It was the scent of false beauty hiding death. My stomach turned, but my feet pressed on. I didn't understand it, not fully, but part of me knew the answers were ahead. Not just about this place, but about myself, my choices, my sin, and the judgment I never thought would apply to me. Each step forward was like a confession, and every breath a punishment. And all around me, the unseen watchers, the demons, the damned, waited in silence, knowing I was next to stand in the fire. I moved toward the glow. When I reached it, I saw a stage, yes, a real stage. Bright lights, fog machines, and a screaming crowd, but these weren't cheers of excitement, these were screams of pure agony. In the middle of the stage, someone was dancing. The moves were familiar. I watched for a few seconds, and then my breath caught in my throat. Is that Michael Jackson? I rubbed my eyes, but nothing changed. It was Michael. He was doing his famous moonwalk, but his legs, his bones were visible. It was grotesque. To be honest, I wasn't even surprised to see him there. As I kept walking, I noticed something even stranger, another sign. There was another inscription under the sign. It read, "Slave owners." My throat went dry. I took a few more steps forward and heard the sounds, the clinking of chains mixed with the sound of something dragging across the dirt. A scream echoed, a raw, wet scream. I slowed my pace. What I saw made my stomach turn. There were chained men, their skin pale, but their bodies were covered in black marks. Their arms and legs were bound in chains, their backs were scarred with open wounds and deep gashes. One of them had black liquid oozing from his shoulder, another was writhing on the ground, yanking at his chains. I'll never forget the look on their faces, pure helplessness and fear. Then something caught my eye. One of the chains on the ground stopped right in front of me. The end of the chain was tied to a man's ankle. He had grey hair and sharp facial features. His jawline was familiar, too familiar. My mind clicked. Is that Andrew Jackson? I muttered. That face, it was the same face from the history books, the portrait that hung in every classroom. I recognized him instantly. My breath hitched for a moment. At that moment, the man pulled at his chains, trying to stand. His eyes locked onto mine. "Get me out of here. Get me out of here. I'm a president." He yelled, but no one cared. A shadow loomed over him. A demon approached, holding a whip in his hand. With a deep, guttural growl, the demon hissed, "There's no presidency here." The whip cracked through the air. Andrew Jackson's screams echoed in my ears. I turned and walked away. My eyes stung, but I didn't look back. Something inside me broke. For a brief moment I thought, this is right. This is what he deserves. But I didn't want to admit that to myself. That thought, it was the same anger I'd felt as a child. I kept walking forward. This time I wasn't as afraid because I understood something about this place. Everyone here was getting exactly what they deserved. But then I asked myself a question: what about me? What am I doing here? The darkness ahead was denser than before, but I knew one thing: this path was leading me somewhere, and no matter what, I was going to keep walking. I reached an open space. Suddenly, everything around me widened. I looked up. There was no ceiling, but I could see things moving in the darkness above. I saw the shadows of winged creatures. Growls echoed from all directions. When I turned around, I saw them. They were bigger and more terrifying than the creatures I had seen before, demons. These creatures surrounded me in an instant, their red eyes glowing in the dark. Some stood on two legs, others crawled on all fours. A few of them had long, twisted horns. One of them stood right in front of me. Its hot breath burned my face. It licked its teeth with its long, disgusting tongue. What I saw in its eyes was enough to pierce a man's soul. In its eyes I saw hatred, rage, and something even worse, amusement. It was having fun. "You belong here too," it roared. But then something happened. Images from the past week flashed before my eyes. The first scene, my daughter Rachel. We were sitting in a kitchen that day. She was holding my hand, trying to tell me something. "Dad, I want to get married," she said. I was happy at first, but then she showed me the boy. He was white, and I opposed it. Her eyes filled with tears. "What does it matter, Dad?" she said. I gave her a hard look. "Forgive me, please, God, forgive me. I'm not like this. I'm not like this," I said. Tears streamed down my face. I started crying like a child. I pressed my face to the ground. "Please, please, it was a mistake, please." Chains tightened around me from every side. Breathing became harder and harder. The laughter of the demons echoed inside my mind. "This will last forever," I told myself. "This pain will never end." The tears that fell from my eyes sizzled on the hot ground. I pressed my head against the ground. "God, if you can hear me, get me out of here, please." At that moment, everything stopped. The laughter ceased. The clanging of metal chains fell silent. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Then I heard a sound. The moment I heard it, tears streamed down my face like a flood. That sound, it carried every truth I had ever known in my life. I lifted my head. There was a figure within the light. It was slowly approaching me. Even with my squinting eyes, I could see the outline clearly, dressed in white, arms open wide. His face radiated such peace that looking into his eyes felt like a child gazing into their mother's eyes. "Who are you?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He was Jesus. My heart knew it before my mind did. "As long as you continue to hold on to hatred, anger, and prejudice, your soul will remain chained," he said. His voice was soft, but each word carried weight. I dropped to my knees. I was just defending myself. "I didn't know," I said. "You knew," Jesus said. "You always knew. You ignored every sign that was shown to you. You mistook your anger for justice. You mistook your prejudice for protection." Those words shattered my heart. I fell forward onto my knees, my face pressed to the ground. Everything came rushing back to me: the student I yelled at in class, the moment I judged my daughter instead of hugging her, the cold distance I kept from my white students. All of it, every one of those moments was a chain I had forged myself. I was wrong. Forgive me, I sobbed. My words were broken, but every word came from my heart. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. It was warm and full of peace. At that moment I felt the chains fall away. My hands were free, my feet were free. It felt as if a weight had been lifted from my chest. Jesus looked at me and said, "You are forgiven, but your soul still needs to be transformed." The light poured over me with such peace that I stopped crying. It was like waking up from a dream, but this time I could see everything more clearly, more openly. I felt pressure on my chest, intense pressure, like someone was sitting on my rib cage. With each push, I heard my ribs crack. 1, 2, 3. Come on, breathe. Suddenly I felt the rush of cold air fill my lungs. I gasped, struggling for breath. My eyes opened bright lights, but they weren't the same red lights from that hell. These were different. These were the lights of an ambulance. I turned my head and saw 2 paramedics with their faces covered by masks. One of them was putting away the defibrillator. "We got him back," one of them said. I'll never forget that phrase, "we got him back." I was back. I was still in the world of the living. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about what I had seen. It felt like a dream, but every time I touched my hands, I could still feel the cold of those chains. Every night I saw the priest, the chained people, and the screams from that river of hell. That's when I realized it wasn't a dream, it was an awakening. One day my daughter Rachel entered the room. She wasn't alone. That young man was with her, the white man. I didn't remember his name, but that was because I had never tried to. I had always seen him as a stranger. He was holding my daughter's hand. I had seen him hold her hand before, but this time I saw it more clearly than ever. That man loved my daughter without fear, and my daughter's happiness was so clear to me that a lump formed in my throat. I looked at Rachel and swallowed hard. "Rachel, if he makes you happy, then he's my family too." My words trembled. It felt as if those words were breaking a chain that had strangled me for decades. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. The man placed his hand on his chest and bowed his head, but at that moment my eyes stayed on Rachel. In her eyes, I saw the little girl she had once been. I was setting her free, and I was finally freeing myself. After that, I dedicated myself to the church and to Jesus. Thank you for listening to me. May God protect you all. There is a sin so subtle, so cleverly disguised, that it creeps into the very fabric of a Christian's life, unnoticed and yet so dangerous. It is not the great sins of the world, murder, theft, or blasphemy, that steal the souls of the faithful. No, this sin is quieter, more insidious, lurking in the prayers you say, the hymns you sing, the acts of devotion you confidently perform. It is a spiritual poison, a poison that penetrates the heart, turning faith into a facade. Millions of believers commit this sin every day, unaware that it can lead them into the fires of eternal damnation. This is not the sin of the atheist, it is the sin of the religious, hidden in the very words you speak to God, the thoughts you harbor in secret, the pride you mistake for piety. Today we bring you the remarkable testimony of William, a man who stood on the brink of hell and received a direct, heartbreaking message from Jesus Christ about this hidden sin. His story is more than a personal account, it is a divine warning, a clarion call for every Christian to examine the depths of his heart before it is too late. So what sin is dragging believers to hell? Are you even now nurturing it with every prayer, every act of worship? Stay with us until the end, for this truth could be the key to your salvation or the revelation of your spiritual peril. Before we begin William's journey, take a moment to open your heart to God's truth. Do 2 things to declare your readiness. Subscribe to this channel to join over 50,000 believers who are seeking the light of God's Word, standing firm in faith together. Leave a comment below with your name and city, declaring your commitment to Christ before heaven, so that His blessings may flow to you wherever you are. Now, prepare yourself. William's testimony will lead you through the darkness of pride and the light of humility, challenging everything you believe about your faith. Let's begin. My name is William, and for half a century, I lived a life I was certain pleased God. Born into a devout Catholic family, faith was the cornerstone of my existence, as natural as breathing. Our home was a sanctuary of prayer, where every morning began with my mother's gentle voice reciting the Hail Mary, her words like a sacred melody weaving through the dawn. Evenings closed with family prayers around a worn Bible on our kitchen table, its pages dog-eared and yellowed, always open as if its mere presence could draw heaven closer. As a child, I absorbed these rituals like a sponge, believing they were the essence of faith, the key to God's approval. I was a model Christian, or so I thought. I attended Mass every Sunday, my pew a familiar seat in the old stone church where sunlight filtered through stained glass, casting rainbows on the congregation. I confessed my sins regularly, reciting my faults to the priest with practiced ease, never lingering on them too long. I followed the commandments meticulously, checking them off like a list that guaranteed my place in heaven. Morning and night I prayed, wrote words, spoken more out of habit than heartfelt communion. I gave to charity, helped my neighbors, lived what I believed was a righteous life. In my mind, I was one of God's chosen, a faithful servant secure in His favor. Yet, beneath this polished exterior, my faith was hollow. My prayers were performances, delivered to an audience of one, myself. My acts of kindness were often motivated by the warm glow of self-satisfaction, not selfless love. I looked at others who faltered, those who missed Mass, who broke commandments, who lived lesser lives, and thought, I'm not like them. My faith is true. I'm better. I wore my devotion like a badge of honor, a shining armor that made me feel untouchable. Hell, I believed, was for rebels, for the blatantly wicked, not for believers like me. The notion that a loving God could condemn someone who prayed, attended church, and lived righteously seemed absurd, almost offensive. I was, in my own eyes, spiritually immune, my fidelity a currency that ensured God's eternal approval. But as I reflect now, I see the fault lines in my certainty. My faith was not a living relationship with God, but a carefully curated routine, a checklist of duties that kept my conscience clean but my heart distant. I never questioned my motives, never examined the pride that swelled when I compared myself to others. I had built a fortress of rituals, convincing myself it was a castle of faith. Was I truly walking with God, or was I merely strutting in the shadow of my own self-righteousness? Did I love Him, or did I love the image of myself as a good Christian? These questions, buried deep, would soon rise to the surface, demanding answers in a way I could never have imagined. The seeds of doubt were there, though I refused to acknowledge them. There were moments, fleeting, uncomfortable, when I felt a void, a nagging sense that something was missing. During Mass, as the priest spoke of surrender and humility, I'd shift in my seat, dismissing the words as meant for others. When I prayed, my mind often wandered, my words mechanical, lacking the fire of true devotion. I'd brush these feelings aside, telling myself that faith was about consistency, not emotion. But deep down, I wondered, was my faith enough? Was I as secure as I believed? These whispers of unease were the first cracks in my spiritual armor, and they were about to widen into a chasm that would swallow my illusions whole. The unraveling of my complacency began on a Sunday that felt different from the start. I woke with a restlessness I couldn't name, a heaviness in my chest that no amount of coffee or routine could dispel. It was as if my soul had been knocking for years, and now it was pounding, refusing to be silenced. The air felt charged, the world slightly off kilter, as if something unseen was stirring, waiting to break through. I went through my morning prayers, but the words felt empty, echoing in a heart that suddenly seemed too small to contain them. Years earlier, I had heard whispers of a peculiar Mass held once a month at an old convent on the outskirts of the city, a place steeped in history and mystery. The Reformed friars there conducted a rite unlike any other. A priest would lay his hand on the forehead of each worshipper, reciting an ancient Latin prayer said to pierce the soul, revealing hidden spiritual evils that even the most devout might harbor. I had dismissed it as superstition, a relic of an overly mystical past, perhaps exaggerated by those seeking sensational experiences. But that morning, an inexplicable urgency gripped me, like a hand guiding me toward a truth I wasn't ready to face. I had to go, though I couldn't explain why. The convent stood like a monument to forgotten times, its stone walls weathered by centuries of wind and rain, its towers reaching toward a grey sky. The courtyard was silent, save for the faint rustle of leaves skittering across the cobblestones. The air was thick with the sharp, acrid scent of incense, curling through the cold stones like a living spirit, its bitterness stinging my nostrils. As I crossed the threshold, I saw the faithful gathered, men and women of all ages, their faces a tapestry of emotions. Some were tense, their eyes darting nervously. Others were calm, their hands clasped in quiet expectation. A few bore expressions of fear, as if they knew the prayer might uncover something they'd rather keep hidden. The interior of the chapel was dim, lit only by flickering candles that cast long shadows on the walls. The pews were worn, the wood polished by generations of worshippers, and the air hummed with a strange energy, a blend of reverence and anticipation. I took my place among the congregation, my heart pounding, though I told myself it was nothing more than nerves. The priest, an older man with deep-set eyes and a serene demeanor, began the mass, his voice resonating with a quiet authority. As the service progressed, the moment of the special rite approached. One by one, the faithful lined up, their steps hesitant yet determined, to receive the priest's touch. I watched, half fascinated, half skeptical, as each person knelt before him. The priest placed his hand on their forehead, his lips moving in the ancient Latin prayer, his voice low and rhythmic, like a chant from another world. The reactions were startling. A young man wept openly, his sobs echoing in the silent chapel, tears streaming down his face, as if a dam had broken. A woman trembled violently, her body shaking, as if unburdened of a great weight, her hands clutching the pew for support. Another collapsed, fainting into the arms of those nearby, her face pale but peaceful, as if she had seen something profound. I told myself it was suggestion, a psychological trick of the mind. I was stronger than that. My faith was unshakable, my heart pure, or so I believed. When my turn came, my pulse thundered in my ears, my chest tight with a mix of anticipation and defiance. I knelt before the priest, the cold stone floor biting into my knees. His hand, warm and steady, pressed against my forehead, and he began to pray. The Latin words flowed over me, unfamiliar yet strangely resonant, like a melody from a forgotten dream. At first I felt only a faint calm, a soothing warmth that eased my racing heart. I closed my eyes, expecting the moment to pass uneventfully, a confirmation of my steadfast faith. But then, without warning, the world dissolved. A deep, liquid darkness enveloped me, not the darkness of night, but something alive, pulsating, as if it had a will of its own. The convent, the priest, the incense, everything vanished, swallowed by this void. I felt no panic, only a strange pull, as if the darkness was beckoning me to confront something I had spent my life avoiding. My body was gone, I was conscious yet weightless, my soul untethered, adrift in a realm that defied all understanding. This was no dream, no hallucination. It was the beginning of a journey that would strip away every illusion I had ever held, leading me into the heart of truth itself. One moment I was kneeling in the convent, the scent of incense sharp in my nostrils, the priest's hand warm against my skin. The next, I was nowhere, suspended in a void of absolute blackness. There was no sound, no light, no sense of my physical form. I was conscious, yet bodiless, my soul a solitary spark in an endless night. Time ceased to exist. A second could have been a century, or a century of fleeting breath. The silence was deafening, not empty but heavy, as if the darkness itself was alive, watching, waiting to reveal a truth I had never dared to face. I tried to move, to speak, but there was nothing to move, no voice to call out. I was alone, yet not alone, as if the void was a presence, a witness to my soul's hidden corners. Questions swirled in my mind unbidden. Where was I? Was this death? Had I crossed some unseen threshold? The absence of answers was suffocating, yet beneath the uncertainty, a strange allure grew. A sense that this darkness was not an end, but a beginning, a doorway to something I had always avoided. Slowly, shapes began to form, faint at first, like shadows emerging from mist. A corridor stretched before me, long and narrow, its walls dark and pulsating, as if they breathed with a life of their own. The air was thick, heavy with an unseen weight, and the ground beneath me, if it could be called ground, was intangible, a surface I felt but could not see. On either side of the corridor hung mirrors, not clear like those in the world of the living, but clouded, their surfaces fogged with centuries of mist, as if they had absorbed the secrets of countless souls. I felt compelled to walk, though my feet touched nothing solid. Each step was a struggle, not physical but spiritual, as if moving forward required peeling back layers of my soul. The mirrors stirred as I passed, their surfaces rippling like water disturbed by an unseen hand. In each one, I saw not my face but versions of myself, fragments of William, distorted yet painfully familiar. There was William, the pious churchgoer, head bowed in prayer, his face serene but his eyes empty. There was William, gazing upward with a haughty smirk, his heart swollen with pride. There was William, laughing with quiet contempt at those he deemed less faithful, his smile a mask for judgment. These were not mere reflections, they were my masks, the roles I had played, the facades I had worn to convince myself and others of my righteousness. Each mirror was a judgment, a silent accusation that screamed, "Look at what you've become." My heart pounded, a rhythm of fear and shame, as the mirrors stripped away my illusions, exposing the man I had hidden even from myself. I wanted to turn away, to run, but there was nowhere to go. The corridor was my soul and I was its prisoner. The walls began to whisper, not with words but with my own thoughts, the ones I had buried in the secret chambers of my heart. "At least I'm not like them," one voice sneered, echoing a moment I had judged a neighbor for missing mass. "My faith is stronger," another boasted, recalling the pride I felt when I prayed longer than others. "That woman doesn't deserve forgiveness," a third hissed, reviving a grudge I had nursed in silence. "That man is a hypocrite," another declared, conjuring the contempt I felt for a struggling brother. Every judgment, every proud thought, every self-righteous notion I had ever harbored echoed back, carved into the air I breathed. I couldn't escape. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of my own sins, each one a weight pressing against my soul. My masks began to fall, one by one, each collapse a blow to my chest, as if my carefully constructed identity was crumbling. I saw the William who prayed to be seen by others, his words hollow, his heart distant. I saw the William who helped the needy, not out of love, but to feel superior, to bask in the glow of his own goodness. I saw the William who avoided sin, not because he loved God, but because he feared judgment, his faith a contract, not a covenant. The realization was a knife, cutting through years of self-deception. How had I lived so blindly, believing my rituals were enough? How had I mistaken routine for devotion, pride for piety? I had built a life of faith, yet my heart was a stranger to God. The corridor was not just a place, it was a mirror of my soul, reflecting every hidden flaw, every unconfessed sin. And it was leading me toward a door I both dreaded and needed to open, for beyond it lay the truth I could no longer avoid. At the corridor's end, a dark wooden door loomed, its surface unadorned, its iron handle cold and heavy with purpose. No signs or symbols marked it, yet an unshakable certainty gripped me. My entire life had been leading to this moment. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle, my heart a storm of fear and anticipation. I opened the door, and a blinding light engulfed me, not warm or comforting, but fierce, purifying, as if it sought to burn away every impurity within my soul. It was not a light of welcome but of judgment, piercing every corner of my being, leaving no shadow unexposed. In the midst of the light, a voice spoke, not from outside but from within, clear, solemn, unmistakable. "William, now you will see the truth." The words were not a promise but a verdict, carrying the weight of divine authority. The light receded, and I stood before a landscape no human words could fully capture, a realm of unspeakable horror that seared itself into my soul. A bottomless abyss yawned before me, its depths swallowing light itself, a chasm that seemed to pulse with despair. From cracks in the scorched earth rose flames, not mere fire but living, pulsating, as if the ground wept molten tears of anguish. These flames were conscious, moving with intent, striking with merciless precision, knowing exactly whom to engulf. The air was thick with sulfur, each breath a struggle, as if the atmosphere sought to choke the soul. The stench was overpowering, a mix of burning metal and decay, clinging to me like a second skin. Above, no sky offered relief, only a suffocating darkness, broken by flashes of crimson lightning that illuminated the horror below, their jagged arcs like the wrath of God tearing through the void. The ground beneath me groaned, not with physical weight but with the weight of countless souls, as if the earth itself bore the fight herself, bore the pain of their torment. Amid the flames I saw them, not demons with horns and claws, but men and women, their faces hauntingly familiar. A pastor who once preached in my city, his voice once thundering with conviction, now stood silent, his eyes wide with terror, his hands reaching out in vain. A deacon I had prayed with, his demeanor once calm and reverent, now writhed in agony, his fingers clawing at the air. A woman who sat in the front pews at Mass, her rosary always in hand, now clutched it as flames consumed her, her face contorted in a silent scream. Their agony was not physical but spiritual, a torment that devoured their very essence, leaving them in a state of eternal despair. I staggered, my mind reeling, my heart a knot of disbelief and horror. These were Christians, believers like me. They had prayed, served, lived for God, or so I had thought. They had filled churches, led congregations, recited scriptures. How could they be here, in this place of unending torment? I cried out, my voice trembling, raw with desperation. Why? They loved you. They served you. How can they be here? The voice answered, its firmness cutting through my confusion like a blade. They prayed, but they never truly opened their hearts. They lived by their own righteousness, not mine. They judged, despised, believed they were better. They hid behind religion to avoid confronting their pride. The words struck me like a physical blow, each one a revelation of truth I had never considered. I saw hands clasped in prayer, consumed by fire, their gestures futile against the flames. I saw eyes turned upward, searching for a heaven that remained silent, their pleas unanswered. The voice quoted a verse one had read countless times, but never truly understood. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, 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 prophesy in your name. Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Matthew 7:21-23. The phrase, one never knew you, pierced my soul like a dagger. It didn't mean they hadn't known God's name or his teachings. It meant God hadn't known them. Their hearts had never surrendered, never opened to his transforming love. They had mastered the language of faith, the rituals of devotion, but their souls were strangers to him. They had liturgy but not love, performance but not repentance. And then, like a thunderclap, the realization hit me. I was no different. My faith too was a facade, built on pride, not surrender. My prayers, my church attendance, my righteous life, were they enough, or were they just a mask hiding a heart as cold as theirs? I stood frozen, my breath shallow, my mind a whirlwind of fear and shame. Was I destined for this place, this abyss of fire and despair? Had I, too, lived a lie, believing my works secured my salvation? The faces of the damned seemed to turn toward me, their silent gazes a warning, don't make our mistake. Each one told a story of faith without heart, of devotion without depth. I wanted to scream, to run, but there was no escape from the truth unfolding before me. The vision was not yet complete, and the deepest revelations were still to come. As the flames of the abyss burned in my vision, an unseen force pulled me deeper into the heart of judgment, as if the truth demanded I see more. The fiery landscape gave way to a colder, darker place, a realm where the torment was not heat, but an icy clarity that cut deeper than any flame. The ground beneath me was no longer scorched earth, but sharp, like blackened glass, its surface reflecting nothing but the weight of my own soul. Each step was a piercing reminder of my vulnerability, as if the ground itself rejected my presence. Before me stretched a black lake, its surface thick and motionless, like oil that refused to ripple or reflect the light. It was not a body of water but a mirror of truth, its depths holding the lives and sins of those who dared to look. The lake did not reflect the sky or the surroundings, it reflected faces, moments, motives, an unrelenting testimony of the heart's hidden realities. The air here was different, not sulphurous but heavy with a silence that pressed against my chest, a silence of self-awareness, of remorse that gnawed at the soul, of shame that could not be escaped. Souls huddled along the lake's edge, bent and broken, like children abandoned in a storm with no one to comfort them. Their forms were not physical but ethereal, their faces etched with anguish, their eyes fixed on the lake's surface. They searched for an exit, a way to escape the truth, but the lake held them captive, its reflections replaying their lives like an endless film. Each scene was a test, each test a condemnation, revealing not just actions but the motives behind them, not just deeds but the heart that inspired them. I saw a man, once a preacher, whose eloquent words had filled churches and inspired thousands. He had written books, led Bible studies, stood as a pillar of faith in his community. Yet the lake showed his heart, cold, dismissive of the weak, using his knowledge to elevate himself above others, his sermons a platform for pride rather than love. He wept as his words played back, their emptiness exposed, each syllable a reminder of opportunities lost to truly serve God. His tears fell into the lake, but the reflections did not change, their truth unyielding. Nearby, a woman stood, her face once radiant with the smile she wore in church, her generosity praised by all. She had given to the poor, organized charity drives, always the first to volunteer. But the lake revealed her motives, not love, but a hunger for admiration, a need to be seen as virtuous. Every act of kindness was replayed, stripped of its facade, showing the heart that sought applause rather than God's glory. She clutched her chest, her sobs silent but profound, as the pain of seeing her true self cut deeper than any flame. Each soul faced the same torment, seeing their lives as God saw them, with no filter, no excuse. There were no screams here, only the crushing weight of clarity, the agony of truth seen too late. I moved among them, invisible yet feeling their pain, their shame seeping into my own soul. I wanted to look away, but the lake called to me, its surface rippling, as if inviting me to see my own reflection. I resisted, fear gripping me, but the pull was too strong. I glanced down, and there I was, not the William the first showed the world, but the William God saw. The lake showed me praying in church, my head bowed, my voice steady, but my heart was elsewhere, my thoughts on how others perceived me. It showed me helping a neighbor, my smile warm, but my motive was to feel good about myself, to prove my righteousness. It showed me judging others, my thoughts sharp with contempt, believing I was better, my faith superior. Each scene was a wound, each truth a blow to my soul. I had lived for myself, not for God. My faith was a performance, my heart a fortress of pride. An old man sat by the lake, his thin frame trembling, his eyes filled with tears that never fell. He looked at me, his voice hoarse but piercing. I was like you, William. I thought belief was enough. I prayed every day, preached to crowds, judged those who faltered. I was respected, admired, praised, a man of faith, they said. But I never knew my heart. I never let God transform it. I hid behind my works, my words, believing they made me worthy. Now I'm here, watching every lost opportunity, every arrogant word, every contemptuous glance. I can't go back. But you can. His words sank into me like stones, heavy with warning and hope. Hell, I understood, was not just fire, it was lucidity. The unbearable clarity of seeing your pride when it's too late to change. God does not judge the outward show of faith, the prayers, the rituals, the works, but the heart within. And a heart swollen with pride, no matter how devout, has no room for him. I stood there, trembling, as the lake's reflections faded, but the truth remained, burning in my soul. Was this my future, to be trapped in this place of eternal regret? Or was there still a chance to turn back? The vision shifted, as if the truth demanded I see yet another layer of deception. The voice spoke again, its tone both solemn and urgent. Now you will see those who spoke in my name, but loved the praise of men more than my truth. The black lake dissolved, and I found myself in a church, not a real one, but a frozen echo, a shadow of worship that felt both familiar and foreign. Rows of pews stretched before a polished pulpit, hands raised in adoration, voices lifted in song. Yet the air was hollow, the scene suspended in a time that didn't exist, as if the worship was a performance, not a connection to God. At the center of the pulpit stood a preacher I once admired, a man whose words had filled stadiums, whose sermons had stirred my heart. His voice was fire, his presence commanding, his messages of salvation and love resonating with thousands. But now I saw his eyes, not fixed on heaven, but scanning the crowd, drinking in their applause, their admiration. His words, once powerful, now rang empty, their truth hollowed out by the motive behind them. The scene dissolved, and he stood in judgment, no longer applauded, no longer revered. Flames bound his hands, not burning flesh but dignity, reducing his once proud presence to despair. The voice spoke, its words cutting through the illusion. He spoke of me but lived for himself. His words were carved in the wood of vanity. He fed on the applause of men, not my love. He prayed to be seen, preached for prestige, not for my glory. I saw his life replayed, not as the world saw it, but as God did. Every sermon was weighed, every prayer examined. He had spoken truth, led souls to faith, but his heart sought the spotlight, not the Savior. His faith was a stage, his devotion a script, his life a performance for the crowd, not a surrender to God. Others appeared, their faces hauntingly familiar, Christian singers whose voices once lifted congregations to worship, faith influencers whose posts inspired millions, theology teachers whose books lined my shelves. They stood in silence, their broken halos at their feet, crowns they had never truly earned. A singer, her voice once angelic, now wept as her songs were revealed as bids for fame, not worship. An influencer, his smile once radiant, now crumbled as his posts were shown to be crafted for likes, not love. A teacher, his knowledge once profound, now stood exposed as a tool for intellectual pride, not spiritual growth. One of them turned to me, his voice a desperate plea that echoed in my soul. William, you too sought to be seen, to feel better, to be admired. You too wanted the approval of others, the respect of the crowd. Be careful. We lost ourselves in words, in the illusion of faith. You can still choose the silence that saves. His words pierced me like swords, for they were true. I too had craved approval, relished the feeling of being a good Christian. I had prayed in church, my head bowed, but my heart seeking the nods of those around me. I had helped others, but often to prove my virtue, to bask in the glow of my own goodness. I had believed, but how often had my heart beat for the eyes of others, not the smile of God. The sin was not in their words or works, but in their motives, pride masquerading as faith, sermons empty of spirit, devotion driven by self, not Savior. The voice whispered, shattering my soul with its clarity, I do not seek your voice, I seek your heart. The words were both a judgment and a plea, a call to strip away the facade and lay my heart bare before God. I stood there, my soul trembling, as the vision of the false faithful faded, but their warning lingered, a fire in my spirit urging me to change before it was too late. The weight of what I had seen crushed me, my illusions shattered like glass under the unrelenting truth. I was broken, not in body but in spirit, my pride exposed, my faith revealed as a hollow shell. Yet this breaking was not destruction, it was necessity, the only path to rebuilding a heart that could truly know God. I fell to my knees, the cold ground unyielding beneath me, my heart a storm of shame, fear, and desperate longing. Lord, I cried, my voice raw, cracking with the weight of my plea, how can I live without deceiving myself or you? How can I love you with a true heart? Show me, I beg you, before it's too late. The voice answered, its words like a scalpel, precise and piercing. Truth is not imposed by force, it is received when pride breaks. The words were not a rebuke but an invitation, a call to surrender the fortress of self I had built. I saw, as if in a vision within the vision, every prayer I had spoken without feeling, every act done for duty rather than love, every moment I had thanked God only because life was good, not because I loved Him. Each memory was a mirror, reflecting not my works but my heart, showing me the pride that had ruled me, the self-righteousness that had blinded me. Humility, the voice declared, is the key to my kingdom, not perfection, not performance, only humility. The word echoed in my soul, a beacon in the darkness, a truth I had never fully grasped. Humility was not weakness, not groveling, but the courage to see myself as I truly was, a sinner in need of grace, a soul dependent on God's mercy. I had spent my life striving to be good, to be worthy, but God did not want my efforts. He wanted my heart, bare and broken, open to His transforming love. I wept, not out of fear but out of shame, not for my sins alone, but for the years I had lived without truly knowing Him. I had prayed, served, believed, but my heart had been a stranger to His voice. I had built a life of faith, yet missed the essence of it: surrender, dependence, love. The tears fell, each one a release, a letting go of the pride that had chained me. I was empty, yet in that emptiness, I felt the stirrings of hope, the possibility of a new beginning. As the voice spoke, a figure appeared, not radiant with glory or clothed in splendor, but simple, human, achingly real. A man sat on the earth, his clothes worn and patched, his hands rough from labor, his face marked by ancient tears. His eyes were downcast, not in shame but in reverence, and in him shone a light, not the light of success or acclaim, but the quiet, steady glow of surrender. He was no preacher, no leader, no figure of prominence, yet his presence was a testament to a faith I had never known. "Do you see this man?" the voice asked, its tone gentle yet profound. He never preached to crowds, never led congregations, never sought the spotlight. Each morning he woke and asked me to heal his heart. Each evening he knelt and questioned if he had loved enough. He never thought his work saved him. He hoped only in my mercy, trusting not in his deeds but in my grace. Now he is with me, his heart forever mine. The vision was both fire and balm, burning away my illusions while soothing my wounded soul. For the first time I understood what God truly desired, not my rituals, not my knowledge, not my works, but my heart, stripped bare, small, and true. This man, unknown to the world, was known to God, his life a quiet hymn of humility, his faith a daily act of receiving grace. He had not sought to be remembered, only to be found by God, and in that he had found eternal rest. The voice spoke again, its words a roadmap for my soul. Live as one who receives faith daily, not as one who possesses it. Do not judge those who fall, be the first to seek forgiveness. Do not preach with certainty, testify trembling. Live to be forgotten by men but found by me. The words were both a command and a promise, a call to a new way of living, a faith rooted not in self, but in surrender. I saw now what it meant to fear the Lord, not a servile dread, but the tender awe of a child who longs not to break the Father's heart. I knelt, not because I was forced, but because I could not stand before a God so just, so merciful, so holy. My heart, once a fortress of pride, was now a broken vessel, open to His grace. The vision of the humble man lingered, a beacon of hope, a reminder that salvation was not earned but received, not achieved but surrendered to. I was not yet whole, but I was beginning, and that beginning was enough. The ground trembled beneath me, not with destruction but with release, as if the earth itself was setting me free. The vision faded, the darkness and light dissolving into a soft, muted glow. I awoke in a hospital room, the harsh fluorescent lights stinging my eyes, the sterile scent of antiseptic jarring after the sulfur and incense of the vision. The world felt foreign, as if I no longer belonged to it, its colors too bright, its sounds too sharp. The sheets beneath me were crisp, the beeping of machines a distant hymn, the muffled voices of nurses outside the door, a reminder of a life I had left behind. Doctors told me I had been unconscious for only a few minutes, a brief lapse they attributed to stress or dehydration. But what I had experienced was no fleeting blackout, it was an eternity compressed into moments, a journey through the depths of my soul and the realities of eternity. No medical test could explain it, no diagnosis could account for the change within me. My soul felt rewritten, its structure fundamentally altered, as if the hand of God had reshaped its very core. For 3 months, a dull, persistent headache tormented me, a physical echo of the spiritual truths I had seen. It was not just pain but a weight. a constant reminder of the faces in the flames, the silent screams, the lake of truth, the voice that pierced my heart. Each night I closed my eyes and saw them again, the chained preachers, the burning souls, the old man's warning, the humble saint's light. The pain was a call to action, a demand that I not bury what I had seen but carry it forward, a burden I could not ignore. I knew I would find no peace until I returned to the priest whose touch had opened this door. I sought him out, my heart heavy with the need to share, to unburden my soul. In the quiet of the convent, I poured out my story, every detail, every revelation, my voice trembling as I relived the horror and hope. His eyes filled with tears, and when I finished he knelt beside me, his hands clasped in mine, praying not as a priest over a parishioner, but as a brother in faith. "William," he said, his voice breaking, "for months I have prayed for an answer to a burden tearing my soul. Your vision is that answer. God has spoken through you, sent you to bring this truth to light." As I left the church, the headache vanished, as if a knot had been untied, a weight lifted from my body and soul. The pain had served its purpose, I had obeyed, testified, and now peace could return. But it was a different peace, not the shallow calm of my old life, but a deep, unshakable assurance that I had been called, chosen, and changed. The peace was not an end, but a beginning, a commission to speak what I had seen. I could no longer remain silent, for the vision was not just for me. It was a warning for all who, like me, had mistaken religion for relationship, prayer for pride, devotion for vanity. This sin, this spiritual pride, is the silent killer of faith, turning believers into Pharisees, grace into a bargaining chip, faith into a trophy. It's the belief that you're better than others, that God owes you salvation, that your works secure your place in heaven. It's the sin that fills hell with Christians, men and women who prayed, served, believed, yet never opened their hearts to God's transforming love. Brothers and sisters, hear me. God does not seek your words, your rituals, your outward righteousness. He seeks your heart, broken, humble, trembling before His holiness. He seeks a faith that receives His grace daily, not a performance that demands His approval. He seeks a love that forgives without measure, a humility that kneels without pride, a life that testifies trembling, not boasting. Do not be deceived by a faith without heart, a devotion without depth. Hell is not just for the wicked, it is for those who wear the garment of faith but hide a heart of pride. Live each day as if it were your last. Love without judging, for judgment is pride in disguise. Forgive without measure, for unforgiveness is a chain that binds the soul. Seek forgiveness as if for the first time, for true repentance is the doorway to grace. Be among those who do the Father's will, not those who cry, "Lord, Lord," only to hear, "I never knew you." Examine your heart, not your works. Ask yourself, do I pray to know God or to be seen? Do I serve to love or to be praised? Do I believe to surrender or to secure my own salvation? This testimony is not the end, it is only the beginning. A call to awaken, to repent, and to see with new eyes before it's too late. But if you think pride is the only hidden danger in the church, think again. Another story waits. A man was taken into the depths of hell, not to see preachers or performers, but to witness the horrifying truth of what leads children into eternal torment. What he saw will crush every illusion and expose what many ignore in silence. The next vision will break your heart because this time it's about the children.